Like hobos, we saints in progress have an expectation to look out for other wandering souls. This is Mike from Catholic Treehouse. I'd like to welcome you to episode 64 of the Saint in Progress podcast, your source for inspiration, information, and directions for your soul's journey back home to the Father's house. I don't know about the rest of you and where you might happen to live in the United States or heck, in the world, who knows? But here in central Ohio, spring has finally sprung, and I don't have to put on a heavy jacket, or actually a jacket at all, to go walk the dog in the morning. And it's a beautiful thing. I think the last of the cold weather is finally behind us. And now this past week, we had a couple cold nights down to 30s. And I kept hearing in my head and saying out loud that line from Groundhog Day. I don't think this winter is ever going to end. But despite that, everything is growing and blooming and green. And after a long, cold winter, it's really great to finally be in springtime. Our hostas are exploding, which means I'm out there after every rainstorm with my cayenne pepper. You see, for those of you who don't have a deer problem in your neighborhood, enjoy your hostas and the fact you don't have to deal with deer destroying your landscaping. When you're planning your landscaping and you're looking at plants and everything else, if your first question isn't, will this grow in my cold hardiness zone, but instead it's, will the deer eat it, you have a deer problem. Now, I know they're God's creatures, but so are termites. Just saying. Now, those deer come along at night when we're sleeping, and if we forget to sprinkle cayenne pepper on them after it rains, the next morning they'll be eaten down to little nubs. Now, in a neighborhood overrun with hungry deer, the price of beautiful landscaping is eternal vigilance. So, there's another springtime, though, I'd like to talk about, and that's the springtime in God's vineyard that is happening right now. There has been an explosion of conversions to the Catholic Church over the past year. They're saying that over 30,000 people in the United States alone became Catholic at the Easter Vigil. Overall, a 38% increase in catechumens came into the church between last year and this year. Certain dioceses saw triple-digit growth. Los Angeles, for example, had over 8,500 people join the Catholic Church. That's a 139% increase. Duluth, Minnesota, 145% increase. Rapid City, South Dakota, 96%. Pensacola, Tallahassee, 85%. Numbers are way up in Washington, D.C., Newark, New Jersey, Houston, Boston. In my own parish, we had almost 30 people join the church, and over half of those were the result of one person, a high school senior who began reaching out to his friends at school. I mean, that is amazing. I mean, he truly took to heart the gospel in Mark 16:15, when Jesus said, "Go into all the world and preach the gospel to the whole creation. He who believes and is baptized will be saved." But the phenomenon isn't just in the United States. It's in France. Over 21,400 people joined the church this Easter. Hong Kong had over 2,500. Malaysia, a country that is predominantly Muslim, had over 2,000. In England, a 60% increase. Globally, estimates are that over 100,000 souls were baptized and brought into the Catholic Church in one night. Praise God. Now, when asked for the reason for this, Cardinal Kupik said, "Research is showing that there really is a deep hunger in the hearts of young people for something that can help them with the meaning of life. But also, there's a woundedness on the part of young people that they are seeking healing for." Now, what I see is that in the wake of COVID, and with all the social media online stuff that's been going on, people are looking for stability in times of turmoil. And if there's one thing the Catholic Church has, it's stability. And after all, we have roots that have been growing for 2,000 years. But there's also something deeper in the psyche of all those converts, I think. My take is that they're looking for the true, the good, and the beautiful. And yes, the Catholic Church has all those things overflowing in abundance. But here's the thing. The enemy isn't happy about this at all. So what he is going to do is he's going to be like the deer in my hostas. He's going to want to come along in the middle of the night, and he's going to want to get those new converts to leave the church. Not necessarily be apostate, but just check out and stop coming. And that, my fellow saints in progress, is where you come in. It's what I'm going to call Hobo Evangelism. Now, why am I calling it that? Well, in case if you haven't figured it out yet, I love history. More to the point, I love little fascinating bits of history. And one of the things that popped out of my weird brain is something called Hobo Code. Before I talk about that, though, let's go back and talk about the U.S. in the late 1800s. Now, there have always been homeless people, right? Gypsies, drifters, whatever you want to call them. Jesus tells us that we'll always have the poor. And some of the Levitical law says specifically to leave some of the crops unharvested for the homeless. Well, in the late 1800s, there were specific names for the three kinds of homeless that you're always going to have. The names that they had back then, and some of them you'll still hear used, but they're not as specific as far as the definitions. But those three terms were bums, tramps, and hobos. Now, bums were the lowest class. They just hung around in the same area and never worked. They were always just looking for handouts. Tramps, on the other hand, would travel from place to place wherever there was a good opportunity. But they only worked when they had to, and they were, well, opportunists, and quite often they were con men. Hobos, on the other hand, were willing to work, and they traveled to get to the work. They'd use the money they earned to buy necessities and maybe a cheap hotel room. If they didn't live in a hotel room, sometimes they would live in hobo camps, and they would share necessities and share food and stuff. And I'm sure by now you have the image in your head of a guy with a stick over his shoulder, all his belongings tied up in a red handkerchief, hopping a legal train ride on a freight train, and that's about accurate. But believe it or not, there was even a National Hobo Convention at one point where they put together a semi-official code of ethics. So they weren't the same as the tramps, and definitely not the same as the bums. And by the way, that handkerchief on a stick, it's called a bindle, in case you're ever on Jeopardy. Okay, so you see, in many ways, we saints in progress are a lot like hobos. We're far from the Father's house. Most of us are spiritual vagabonds. I mean, the church is our soup kitchen where we get fed, and Eucharistic adoration is our hotel room, but we know it's all temporary. At some point, we have to get back on the road, so to speak. And we know the road can sometimes be a hazardous place. But like a hobo, if you're serious about making progress towards being a saint, that means you're willing to do the work in the vineyard. That work is on yourself, your own spiritual life. But there's something more. And here's where Hobo Code comes in, and I tie all this together like a bindle on a stick. Hobos looked out for each other. They'd share information, share food, and they developed not just their own lingo, but also markings that they leave for other hobos. There were little pictograms that shared important information. For example, some markings were about where to get food or clean water, or indicated a safe place to sleep. Others were warnings to alert other hobos to danger, such as property owners with guns or attack dogs. And some were handy tips, such as insist and they'll give in, or talk religion, or tell them a sob story. This hobo code wasn't just something nice to do. It was an expectation that hobos had of each other. Now, like hobos, we saints in progress have an expectation to look out for other wandering souls. That expectation is set by God. You see, you, me, and every saint in progress, we all need to engage all these new converts and make them a part of the life of the church. We can't wait for the pastor to do it, or the front office, or the leader of this or that ministry. You and I, we need to welcome them into the life of the church and engage them and show these new converts what it means to live like a good and faithful Catholic Christian, and what the church and being a member of it means to you. You need to show these new Catholics the true, the good, and the beautiful. You, Yes, you have an obligation to evangelize the evangelized. They've already figured out why they joined the church, why they wanted to join the church. But now it's up to you to show them why to stay. Remember, the enemy is eyeing these new Catholics the way the deer in my neighborhood eye my hostas. And if you don't do something, these new Catholics will be devoured by morning. So over the course of the next 3 episodes, I'm going to talk about ways you can evangelize and engage these new Catholics in your parish and in your life with hobo code of your own. Sharing the true, the good, and the beautiful with these new Catholics will also help you get comfortable with sharing the faith with others who aren't Catholic. And who knows? Maybe next year, it'll be you at the Easter Vigil, inviting in and welcoming in a group of your friends and bring them into the church. Okay, that's it for this week. Do not miss the next 3 episodes. And for fun, the show notes over on Substack, there will be links to all sorts of articles about hobo code. It's very, very fascinating stuff. So just a reminder, be sure to subscribe, in particular over at Substack at catholictreehouse.substack.com, where you'll get bonus material like links to hobo code emailed along with the podcast episode. And you can, if you want, support this show with a paid subscription. You can also go to catholictreehouse.com and subscribe to the mailing list over there and be notified of new books as they come out. When you subscribe either on Substack or catholictreehouse.com, either way, you'll get a free PDF download of an examination of conscience based on the virtues of faith, hope, charity, prudence, justice, temperance, and fortitude. It is powerful, and it will help you calibrate your internal compass and keep you hopping the right train home to the Father's house. So as always, love God and neighbor, get to confession, stay in the state of sanctifying grace, pray your rosary for peace and for the salvation of souls. And most importantly, remember that you are a saint in progress, so go out there and be a saint.